Working memory. Working memory is one of our brain's executive functions. It's a cognitive skill that is important to what we do every day in school, work, and life. It refers to our brain's ability to hold on to information, to keep information in mind while we think about it, manipulate it. Uh, we might bring in new information from the outside world and information that we have stored in long-term memory to understand and solve a problem. Sometimes people use the analogy of a work table, like a workspace. And so think of it maybe as the workspace in your kitchen where you bring in new groceries. You're going to make a recipe. And while you're doing that, you need ingredients that are already in your kitchen. You need new ingredients. You put them together and you have them all in one place. So working memory isn't literally a place in our brains, but it's a good analogy because it's sort of where we keep information while we're working on it. Another important factor about working memory is that it's absolutely key to learning. So when information comes in, new information, let's say we're listening to a teacher, or we're reading a book, whatever it might be, it's where we hold that information. And if we are not holding it in working memory and elaborating it in working memory and practicing it in working memory and thinking about it in working memory, it's never going to get to long-term memory. So it's a key aspect of our long-term memory process, even though it refers just to holding on for a short period of time. So here's a little bit of an example. If I give you four numbers, let's say 5, 3, 9, 6. Can you repeat them? 5, 3, 9, 6. Okay. So most people, most adults can hold on to that many pieces of information. But working memory is very limited. And so if I gave you a much longer number, something much more complicated, most likely you would not be able to hold on to the whole thing. Now, I talked about manipulating information and thinking about it. So if I now said 5396 and I ask you to repeat those numbers in the opposite order you heard them, 5396, 63, 539, 5396. It's not easy, is it? All right. So that's our brain's ability to manipulate that. And if I said now give them to me in numeric order, that one's easier for me, 3, 5, 6, 9. That's again us being able to use information in working memory. Now think about the kind of everyday situations that we use working memory in. One way that it shows up very often in schools and in school struggles for kids is reading comprehension. So if you're reading, working memory is what allows you to hold on to the beginning of the sentence until you get to the end, to hold it what's happened in the first couple of sentences of the paragraph until you get to the end of the paragraph and think about it as a whole. It's where we make meaning. And so if you have a child who can read a text and gets to the end and didn't understand it or can't tell you what it was about, very often that can be attributed to working memory. If you think about it now in the context, let's go to the math classroom. So now we have a multi-step math problem where we have to maybe create common denominators, and then we have to cross multiply, and then we might have to do some other things. Working memory is also what helps us keep track of those steps and make sure that we're not missing something so that we get the correct answer. In everyday life, it shows up a lot in kids getting a set of instructions and not being able to carry them out. So if you perhaps ask your child to go up to their room and get their backpack and their soccer shoes and then come to the kitchen and put a juice box in their backpack. Seems like a pretty simple set of instructions, but for many kids, their working memory capacity isn't sufficient to hold all of that in their minds. And so what you may find is they get upstairs, they get their backpack, and they get downstairs, and they know they've missed something, maybe, and it's like deer in the headlights. Like, what did you ask me? And it's not because they weren't paying attention. It could be, but in this case, we're going to say they've got strong attention. It wasn't because they are not trying to cooperate or they're being difficult. It's because their brains simply don't hold on to the information all the way to the end. The good news is that, like other cognitive skills, working memory can be strengthened with comprehensive integrated cognitive training. That's what helps train cognitive skills to be stronger and to work better together, so that when we're holding information in working memory, we're also able then later to transfer it to long-term memory. We're able to combine it with our reasoning skills and hold the right information in to solve a complex problem, whether it's visual spatial, whether it's abstract, whether it's thinking about something based in language. All of those skills have to just work together in order to have us be the best possible learners that we can be. So you can simplify instructions. That's a lot of what happens in school. Give instructions one at a time. Go get your backpack. Now go get your soccer shoes, another trip up the stairs. That's giving pieces of information one at a time so that the working memory will hold on to them much more likely. You can continue to, stop and summarize reading after every few words in order to improve that comprehension. There are lots of workarounds and accommodations for weaker working memory. Putting a little list of checklist steps for a math problem, for example. But none of those strengthen working memory. All that does is work around them and try to mitigate the impact that we'll have on day-to-day functioning. But as I said, the great news is that we can strengthen them with the right kind of cognitive training.